Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome back to Kero Blaster by Studio Pixel. So, when we last left off, we had just made it through Ox Hotel and gotten our new jetpack. So we're going to be trying that out here in White Laboratories. Right off the bat here, you fall into this pit. I think, strictly speaking, you don't have to fall in here, but I usually do anyway. There's a little mini-boss in here, this mole guy. He's actually harder than the mini-boss, I would say, from the last level. Even though he's only a preliminary boss, and in fact, this is the only level in the game with 3 bosses, technically. 3 things with health bars.
What would you say makes him harder?
The fact that he goes back and forth between those 2 areas, and instead of it being continuous, he uses the jetpack to do it. Oh boy, I'm having a little jetpack trouble here. Actually, this is a very useful little area, so it's actually better off, I think, for you if you fall in here, because it gives you a chance to test out the limits of the jetpack. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but the jetpack has some unusual controls that are a little hard to get used to. If you are pointed straight up, like if your gun's pointing up when you have the jetpack, and you do a double jump, you will go straight up. And you get a lot of vertical distance in that, but almost no horizontal. On the other hand, if you're moving to the left or right, you'll get a lot of horizontal, but almost no vertical. And if you mess that up, if you're accidentally going a little too far in one direction when you press the double jump, it is very easy in this game to fall right into pits. You'll just like bump up against the wall and fall back down.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that little guy, meet the most common enemy in this particular level in White Laboratories. These little... I don't even know how to describe them. They're like buzzsaws. There are other enemies we'll see later on that turn into 2 of them when you hit them. It's funny, the way these guys are designed, especially in hard mode, they're almost more like a trap than an enemy. So I don't know if you remember, but we ran from one of these wheels last episode. We're going to be seeing a lot more of them in this. But in this level, usually these wheels will not fall down unless you've flipped a bunch of switches from red to green. In that particular case, it's sensible to do the one on the left last, but I kind of messed that up. And then you have to leap over it. So this is another thing that's encouraging you to test out the jetpack and figure out how it works. You pretty much need to do a straight leap overhead. If you just try to do the left or right double jump, you will probably run straight into it. And if it rolls into the wall and you're between it and the wall, you will get crushed.
Yep.
Like so.
What?
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to get crushed in this game, actually. Yeah, that was a little embarrassing. I don't think that had ever happened to me before when I was playing this normally. It happens a lot more on hard mode because there's a lot more of these little platforms. I don't know what these things are supposed to be carrying. I guess White Laboratories is a chemical company? It's an interesting concept anyway. So there's actually a secret in this room. You may have noticed that one fan isn't moving, the brown one.
Yeah.
That's a key that there is a little secret hallway in here that leads to a treasure chest.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of money in it. Very nice little secret.
Yeah, I'll say.
So here's a new mechanic we're running across. These little bombs that are inside crates. Maybe this is a munitions company, now that I think about it. Anyway, when you destroy the crate, the bomb will fall down, and it creates 2 flames that go in either direction from where the bomb hit. The moles here will also throw bombs that will do the same thing. One thing it took me a while to figure out that you can take advantage of is that these bombs will actually interfere with each other. So if you start a flame wall going in one direction, it will cancel out a wall going in the other. When they meet each other, they basically cancel each other out. At least I thought they did. Now it's starting to look like they're not doing it here. Well, maybe I'm just a little confused, I don't know. We'll have ample opportunity to see how that works in Zangyo mode, when there's going to be a lot of fire around. There's pretty much just more of everything in hard mode in this game. Which is not to say they just put more stuff in. There is different, level design. But there is also just tons more of everything. So here's another enemy. We saw this at the beginning, but this is going to get a little more complicated now. The laser shooting enemies. And here we have the actual proper mini-boss in this level. He uses those bombs just like his underlings. It's funny, this is the only case in the whole game where I think they reuse, like, an enemy sprite, or mostly the appearance of the enemy, from one level to another. This guy is very similar to the mini-boss from the last level. And I'm not sure why. I think there might be a connection between the Ox Hotel and the White Laboratories.
Maybe.
Like, since they're both industrial areas, as opposed to the more natural areas from the other levels. I don't know, it's food for thought.
Or maybe they just felt like reusing an enemy sprite.
Maybe it doesn't mean anything at all. I'm a very paranoid person. Anyway, very lucky here. I got to get 2 upgrades at once. A heart boost, but more importantly, upgrading the multi-shot into the quad.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty useful.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the quad shot is that it fires in 2 different ways depending on whether you're shooting forward or up. When it's forward, the shots are a lot more concentrated. When it's up, they're a lot more fanned out. So depending on what you're trying to do, it might be beneficial to shoot up, even if the enemy is to your right.
Because if you're trying to engage groups rather than concentrate fire on one target.
The final upgrade of this weapon is even better for that, but we'll get to that when it comes to it. So one interesting thing you have to do in this room is that you have to destroy those little bulbs in order to free the platforms that you need to ride on. They're stuck until you free them.
Interesting.
That's very simple, though. I mean, I wouldn't even call it a puzzle. It's just something you have to do. This game doesn't really have any puzzles, properly speaking. But it does have some things that make you think. Here we're coming across a very interesting enemy. We may have run across one of these guys before. But yeah, it's a safe that's, it's not very safe, actually. Yeah, it is kind of like that, except it doesn't try to fool you at all.
No.
Like, it's already hostile to start with. This isn't exactly Dark Souls. Although, you know, when I realized what you do to figure out that something is a mimic in Dark Souls, it suddenly seemed that it was a little too easy to find them out. You know, you just look at the chain, and that tells you, like, right off the bat.
Yeah.
Maybe Miyazaki expected people to figure that out on their own, so it could be a reward.
Oh,
but, you know,
mimic?
it's the internet.
Oh, the chain?
Yeah.
That's very hard to spot if you don't know them.
Well, that's sort of my point, is it's very difficult to identify that's the difference if you don't know. But once you do know the secret, it's a very easy thing to look for.
Well, that's
and it's a very obvious difference.
That's a lot of Dark Souls. There's a lot of Dark Souls that's much easier if you know the right thing.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, I just thought it would be more fun if there was some kind of mimic where you had to use your brain in order to figure it out. A little harder.
Maybe.
Anyway, remember this guy from the last level? There are actually a lot of them in the game. I think there's 1 per level from now on. Oh, with the exception of the next one. So.
Actually, I think in Dark Souls 2, the mimics don't have any identifying marks.
Oh, that's interesting. I was actually just going to ask you if there are differences between games of this.
Dark Souls 1 and 3, the mimics have the distinguishing marks.
So definitely Miyazaki's idea then. His pet mechanic.
Yeah, probably. Dark Souls 3 does undo a lot of the decisions made in Dark Souls 2, and I have ambivalent feelings about that.
Yeah. Anyway, this room is just absolute mayhem, especially if you just try to push right forward. The game nudges you into releasing the wheel, which simultaneously gives you one more thing to worry about, but also plows through a lot of these enemies. But I don't know, I'm a bit more careful, I guess, so I just decide to go straight through and clear them out. And once you've done that, there's no reason to release the wheel, but I think I do anyway, just for fun. The thing is, the wheel will chase you all the way towards this wall, and by that point you have to do another leap to get out of the way. I'm making this look kind of easy, but that's just because I've used the jetpack a lot, so I'm used to its mechanics. When you're still a little iffy on how to use it, this can actually be a very nerve-wracking segment, because you're distracted by all of the enemies, but at the same time, at the end, you have to execute a really good jump. And it's easy to feel like you're running out of time, and that will get you stressed out. Like you see here, I ran as fast as possible, and I still only had like a second or 2 to make that jump.
Couldn't you just go to one of the higher platforms?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that. Oh yeah, maybe you could do that. The first time I played this game, though, I didn't. The game kind of tricked me into just running down the corridor with the thing chasing after me. So when I first played through this game, I found this one of the more difficult bosses. This boss of level 4. It's this armored truck that shoots missiles at you. Pretty simple concept, actually. Very Contra. This whole area reminds me a lot of Contra.
Oh, I was going to ask if you answered the question whether the missiles can be destroyed.
Yes, they can. However, generally speaking, it's not that easy to do. By the way, if you don't...
Cool.
Yeah, if you don't manage to jump on top of the truck, it will crush you and insta-kill you, so... It's harder in reverse because the truck is taller in the back. But if you're used to it, it's still not too difficult. So that would have been an insta-kill very soon if I hadn't just been lucky enough to defeat it right then. I got lucky. The first time I played through this boss was very frustrating. It killed me several times. But it really does demonstrate how much easier this game gets when you've mastered the mechanics. Particularly jumping. The intricacies of this somewhat unorthodox jetpack style come into play pretty much from here on out. Every level will have some kind of jumping level. And honestly, the worst one, I think, is in the next level. On both normal mode and hard mode, oddly enough, I feel like level 5 is the hardest, even though there are 2 levels after it. It's very strange. I'm not sure why, but you will see soon enough how difficult level 5 is.
Would it spoil if you told me what makes it hard?
Well, we'll see it.
Oh.
It's the next level.
Oh.
By the way, I forgot to mention, very unprofessional, we just got a new weapon, the Flame, which is going to be very useful for the next level because it takes place in the snow.
And it, like, melts the snow?
So, I don't know if you noticed, but those little black creatures, the Negativus Legatia, they crippled or destroyed our transporter. So we just managed to get back, but we were kind of beaten up. So here we are in Tonekawa Hospital. Oh, I shouldn't have just named them, because I think this is actually the first time the game mentions them. So yeah, these creatures represent... He says your past, but I think the idea is they represent someone's past, not necessarily any of the main characters. I will do a little kind of spoiler here. This whole game is oriented sort of around the idea of the workplace, like an office, and how it makes people feel. So we'll get into that later. It's going to be far more relevant in hard mode, but for now we'll just stick with the idea that we're an exterminator trying to get rid of these things. Oh, and we get a nice little bonus here, a little jacket, because it's cold. The jacket will take 1 hit. It's kind of like a way to show your expertise. If you can go through the whole level without getting hit at all, you'll still have the jacket on by the end. There's like something like that in other games I've seen. Like there's a kick me sign that will fall off in one game if you ever roll. So you have to go through the whole game without doing it, but that means you're an expert.
And have a kick me sign on your back.
Oh yeah, right, shows how good you are. Anyway, if you were paying attention to that cutscene, the pet that's been in the president's office this whole time is one of these creatures. So while we're doing this, these guys are going to try to take care of that pet, because the cat guy said, you know, if we manage to get rid of it, maybe there'll be no more overtime. Very important. No, no one does. But in Japan, it's almost constant. I mean, it's a very well-known phenomenon in Japan that people will just be at their desks till 9 o'clock at night trying to work something out. There's lots of businesses in Japan that just are on tough times, and the only thing they can think of to, you know, change things is to work longer hours, you know, try to do more work. Sometimes it's not always effective, though.
Well, that's one of the most common causes for overtime is just there's work that needs to get done.
Exactly. It's actually very appropriate for video games, because video games are well known for the crunch time phenomenon. Where people will have to work a lot right before release. Actually, a friend of ours, Joe, he works for a software company, and he has definitely felt the crunch time stress.
Yeah.
And overtime. I guess you do too, huh, Greg? That's probably happening.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say, you know, I work for a software company too.
Yeah.
I work in,
We live in the future. Everyone works for a software company.
Well, I work in quality assurance, so for me it's mostly during release.
Release week.
Before release. Which is probably the busiest time for, which is usually the busiest time for developers as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's also when you find half of the bugs that you thought weren't there.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, we're going to find reason to talk about that too in this game, because the idea of bugs in a game also comes up in this. Really, this is one of those games where if you're inclined to be, you know, pretentious, you can read a lot more into this game than is on the surface. It's debatable whether or not it's true, but we'll get to that in later modes of the game. You need to go through the harder levels really to do that. Oh man, I just lost my jacket.
I note also, and this is like many flamethrowers in many games, this has extremely high damage but also very short range.
That is correct, and it only fires in little short bursts too. You actually need the flamethrower to destroy some things in this level, like those little purple thorns. They are not vulnerable to any other weapon. On the other hand, the fire's a really bad weapon for these guys. With them, you need to hit a little tiny sliver. So the laser or the pea shooter upgrades are actually the best for that. Oddly enough. These are very strange enemies. They have these little polar bear heads. They fire blocks at you, and when you destroy them, the head launches towards your location. If the head gets between you and the ground, it will kill you. Like, insta-kill. I don't show it very much, but that's because I really don't like having it happen. So be careful when you're fighting those guys. In hard mode especially, they're one of the most annoying parts of the game. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So there's a nice little bonus life. Pretty easy to get, honestly. It's not hard to dodge those icicles. The icicles mostly serve as a distraction, so you get hit by other enemies. That's the way this game goes. These little snow guys, they're a little tough because not only do you need to get rid of them, but they launch little ice pellets. And the pellets themselves can be destroyed by the flamethrower, but no other weapons. So if you're not using the flamethrower against them, you'll be facing like a room full of projectiles. So you gotta be pretty careful about that. And in general, through most of this level, through most of the Hekichi Plateau, it makes sense to keep the flamethrower equipped. There are very few enemies in this that aren't, you know, weak to the flamethrower. However, one exception is this. This is an area where the flamethrower is not the best weapon. So, we need to clear out all of this snow. And in fact, one thing you might have noticed is a lot of these icicles are dripping from like pipes and things like that.
Oh, that's cool.
These are not supposed to be frozen. They're frozen because the building is sort of offline. So what we need to do is get it back online. We need to get these fans running so that the snow will melt. And it turns out the reason that they're not working is because of this guy, who has clogged up the whole ventilation system.
I like the idea that hitting the chunks of snow on the ceiling dislodges them.
Right, and you have to be careful to dodge them because they will crush you.
Because, you know, it's kind of like how avalanches work.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a neat concept. So this guy's actually a pretty easy mini-boss. He will go between the grates, and every time he goes in a grate, little tiny guys will spawn. And then when he turns red, he'll drop to the ground and, you know, go along the walls. But overall, very easy boss. Easy mini-boss. Pretty much easier than the other mini-bosses in the game. I can't think of another one that's easier. So you may have noticed me thinking about getting the final upgrade to the quad, which is Shuriken. Those are very interesting, but we'll get to that when we come to it. Anyway, I get my jacket back, which is one nice thing. In that little break room area, after they give you the jacket for the first time, you will always have a jacket there waiting for you.
Cool.
It's a nice way to compensate for not getting much health, which I have not been getting much health lately. I love these enemies, these little refrigerators. It's a very odd design. But they're basically sentient refrigerators, and they spit out snowballs. They're more difficult than the snow guys, mostly because they take a lot more damage. And also, actually, because the snowballs move very quickly. These are rapid-fire projectiles. As long as you've got the flamethrower, you can probably destroy them before they get to you. But if you're using any other weapon, then you have to dodge them, and that's not easy. By the way, if you're wondering about my strange behavior, I'm just grinding here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get enough to get the next upgrade. And I lose my jacket. Incidentally, let's talk about that. You get the jacket once in the break room in every level. If you lose it at that point, it does not respawn. So, you know, that's unfortunate. But as a way around it, you can just keep, you know, getting more health. I don't know if you've noticed it up to now, but the most expensive thing in this game for most of it is an extra life, which costs like 1,500 coins. It's so expensive that I have literally never bought one in the whole game. Oh, and here we go. We powered it up. Oh, sorry, Ninja is the name, but basically it's little laser shurikens. Oh, I'm wrong. That does respawn. Maybe I'm thinking of a different area in the game. In any case, now we have probably my favorite weapon in the entire game.
So it works kind of like a combination of its previous incarnation in the bubbles, right?
Yes, it will bounce off the wall, but also spread. It's extraordinarily useful, both for several bosses in the game, and for just regular enemies. In close quarters, it's definitely the best weapon in the game, no question about it. The only one that competes with it, I would say, is the laser Uzi, which is the final upgrade of the pea shooter. But the laser Uzi is best for enemies that you need to stay far away from, or that you need to fire in a straight line. By the way, if it seems like I'm completely screwing up here, it's not entirely my fault. There's wind through this whole room that blows you back constantly, and it's very difficult to get a grip on how the mechanics work. Essentially, if you keep pushing forward and jumping, you can maintain your momentum, but as soon as you stop, the wind will start pushing you back pretty hard. You can see here how far backward I'm moving when I don't go full speed ahead.
It's weird that you don't get shelter from it when you're...
I actually do. It's just hard to tell. That's the odd part about this. So these are some new enemies, who only appear in this level, actually. These little blobs that fall from the sky.
That's odd.
Yeah, they are kind of odd. They're very, minimalistic in their design. Which is a nice way of saying ugly. Anyway. So yeah, you just completely carve up fish and other enemies with this. As I've said before, the quad is the only weapon that does not lose its power underwater, pretty much.
Oh.
Which is going to be relevant, and in the next level it's going to be even more relevant, actually. I don't know if they intended to have these weapons all be really balanced, but I will say the ninja weapon is really overpowered. Yeah. So whatever Pixel intended, this game is not balanced. I use the ninja almost exclusively after I get it. The only time I don't is for the enemies that are specifically, where you're specifically meant to use a different weapon. When I have a choice, I use the ninja. Anyway, here's some little jumping puzzles. So I should say platforming challenge. It's pretty easy when you're used to it, but it can be tricky on a first playthrough.
I can imagine.
I also like the little change in background design here. So this whole time we've been on what's called a plateau. It's been fairly straightforward, just a snow level, but now we're getting into this sort of ice tower. It's a lot more about climbing, and it's a lot sort of a lonelier feel. This actually reminds me of some of the later stages in Cave Story.
I was thinking Spelunky, but yeah, I can see that.
Maybe it's the clouds that are making me think of Cave Story and the moon in the background. There's a section later on in it where you're at the top of the island in this building, and it looks a lot like this. It's a very, pixel kind of design. Oh, that was weird. That guy was just hanging out here by himself, and he didn't even bother to attack me. There's no one in this room. I guess it must be safe. Oh, crap. No, it's never safe. So this is the boss of this level. He's this little, pustule guy. You've got to be very careful because this guy, even though he moves slow, can trap you in a corner, and he will kill you if he pushes you against the wall. Anyway, once you destroy his 3 little bulb protrusions, he gets a little more annoyed, and he starts rotating very quickly and sending these little guys out to attack you. One thing that's very annoying here is it's almost impossible to predict these tendrils coming out, and if one hits you, it will hurt you. So sometimes this boss can seem a little bit random, a factor that is activated even more in hard mode. But even on just normal difficulty, this is one of the harder bosses in the game, I would say. He also doesn't take a lot of damage. You have to keep plugging away and making sure he doesn't crush you. After you get him... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, he seems kind of like a Cuphead boss in some ways. Because
a little bit, yeah. With all the stuff shooting out and the enemies falling from the ceiling. It's definitely a distracting boss. And yeah, look, I'm already down to 1 health. I'm pretty sure this guy kills me at least once. One semi-nice thing about this boss is you can get hearts by defeating the enemies that fall. However, like the rest of the game, it's kind of random whether you get one. Oh, there we go, though. I got one. I'm not going to say exactly how this boss gets harder in hard mode, because we will see it later, but trust me, this boss gets brutal in hard mode.
I can imagine.
For various reasons. Ooh, some nice jetpack jumping there. Helps me out. And this is annoying. I am stuck because this guy, like, put a tendril right on top of me. So you can't move when he does that. I'm pretty sure if you stay to the wall, no one will be able to fall directly on you. They'll fall right next to you instead. But I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, this is decision time. You know, if I get one more hit on this guy, pretty much he'll die. If he gets one more hit on me, I will. Yep, messed up. It seems
like there's some luck involved in
there absolutely
where
is.
the pustules come out as well.
That is absolutely correct. This boss is a little too RNG. It's frustrating. But, you know, there's some mitigating factors. He's not very aggressive, which is one of the things that's helpful. You can wait him out quite a bit. Actually, the tendrils are more likely to hurt you than anything else when they come out randomly and, you know, scribble all over the room.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I think, the last guy. We've finally cleared out everything.
Interesting.
I think this was the big guy who was behind everything. You know, there's no more infestation. But there's no transport device in this, so we have to take a train to get back. We'll get reimbursed for the ticket price. He's very careful to explain that, but still, it's annoying. I mean, I'm a future frog. Why should I have to take a frickin' train? It's like the 50s. Anyway, just a little celebration here, because I've done a good job today. That sky's still there, though. That's weird. Anyway,
weird.
I didn't see a train on the way here, so I don't know how we're going to get to one. Oh, crap. Yeah, so you never make it to the train. Not in this level, at least.
Aww.
So, that is it for today. I will see you guys later for the finale of Kero Blaster. And,
Can't wait.
Just a spoiler, we will make it to the train eventually. Look forward to it. Good night, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.